Everyone thinks Japan's post-war economy was handed to them. It wasn't, it was engineered by people with very specific incentives. By 1945, Japan lay in ruins. Cities burned, currency worthless. The yen, once a symbol of imperial expansion, was now a punchline. But here's the thing, American occupation forces needed a functioning Japan not out of charity, out of Cold War arithmetic. Containment required a stable ally in Asia, so the US didn't just rebuild Japan, they rebuilt its money. Exhibit 1, the fixed exchange rate. In 1949, the US pegged the yen at 360 to the dollar. That number wasn't discovered, it was chosen, deliberately. A weak yen made Japanese exports dirt cheap on global markets. American planners wanted Japan's factories humming, not idle. They wanted Japanese workers employed, not radicalized. Follow the incentive and the policy makes sense. For 2 decades, that peg held. Japanese manufacturers flooded world markets with radios, motorcycles, cameras, goods so affordable that Western competitors howled. Made in Japan was a punchline about cheap junk. Nobody was stupid. The exporters knew exactly what they were doing: undercut everyone, grab market share, build industrial muscle. But by the late 1960s, the math broke. Japan's economy was booming, productivity soared. Inflation crept up at home while the yen stayed artificially weak abroad. The fixed peg became a fiction nobody believed. In 1971, President Nixon pulled the pin. The Bretton Woods system, that entire architecture of fixed rates, collapsed. The yen floated free. What happened next was brutal and brilliant. The yen rocketed higher. Suddenly, Japanese exports weren't cheap anymore. That should have killed the economy. Instead, Japanese firms upgraded. They stopped competing on price. They competed on quality. They invented just-in-time manufacturing. They obsessed over efficiency. Necessity rewired the entire culture of production. By the 1980s, the yen had become a store of value. Japanese banks held trillions. The currency wasn't just money, it was a claim on a nation that made things people actually wanted. The yen moved into the top tier of global reserve currencies, sitting alongside the dollar and the Deutsche Mark. That's not accident, that's earned. But the 1990s cracked the foundation. Real estate and stock bubbles inflated beyond reason. When they burst, they didn't just deflate, they stayed flat for a decade. The lost decade, economists called it. Growth stalled. The yen, though, held its value. Why? Because the underlying economy was still sound. That's the asymmetry of trust. It takes decades to build, seconds to shatter, but the core stays. Fast forward to today. The yen is the world's third largest reserve currency. Japan's debt-to-GDP ratio is the highest among developed nations, nearly 260%. By conventional wisdom, that should have killed the yen years ago. It hasn't. Why? Because the debt is mostly owed to Japanese savers in yen. The currency is, in effect, backed by domestic trust, not external demand. That trust matters in ways textbooks don't always capture. When crisis hits 2008-2020, any panic money flows into yen. It's called the safe haven trade. Investors sell risky assets and buy yen because they believe the Bank of Japan will defend it. Belief becomes reality. The yen strengthens precisely when the world needs certainty. The deeper story here isn't about the yen itself. It's about how a currency reflects the nation behind it. Japan's yen went from worthless to powerful not through decree, but through decades of building things that mattered, managing crises without collapse, and maintaining institutional credibility. The money was always a mirror. Today, as global trade shifts and central banks experiment with new tools, the yen's role continues to evolve. It's a currency that survived wars, bubbles, demographic collapse, and deflationary traps. That's not luck. That's the compound result of institutions that didn't blink when they should have held steady, and held steady when they needed to adapt. The yen's journey from rubble to reserve currency tells you something true about all money. It's a bet on the future. Not on gold, not on government promises, but on whether institutions will make the hard choices that keep people believing. Japan made those choices. That's why the yen endured. This video is for educational and informational purposes only and is not financial advice. Always do your own research. Subscribe for weekly deep dives into the geopolitical economics that shape global power, the forces that move currencies, nations, and markets. This video is for educational and informational purposes only and is not financial advice. Always do your own research.